I would tell anybody if you're facing that situation where your life seems not true to yourself, it's not connecting. Take a hard look at it. And it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight, but the journey is so worthwhile. And I've been saying this a lot lately, but I have a new theory, and that is our lives are very linear. You know, you go to school, go to the right school, get the right job, da 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 da. And I think that if we lived lives that were truer to ourselves and we
Mm.
moved more by emotion and intuition, what an interesting ride we would have,
Oh, it would be pretty cool
wouldn't
because
it?
we would allow ourselves, to just kind of put ourselves out there.
Carlamay has written a moving book called Youth Truth, Engaging in Conversation That Can Change Lives. It's a compendium of stories about youth and their experiences. It takes place in Calgary, Canada, where Carla May was a police liaison officer with local schools. These stories will touch your heart and get you thinking, and so will this podcast. Carla May, welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, tell us your story.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here today. So, story goes back. Um, I'm a singer. I am as you know, I'm a retired police officer. Um, I have a psych and sociology degree and a minor in music. And when I look back, once I got out of university, as a young person, um, I I wanted, well, number one, I really wanted to go and sing. So I went to Nashville, tried it out there, had met with some reps there, had got some songs. But as we all know, musicians do not make a lot of money, and many of them are singing for their supper. And I came from a family where education was very, very important. So and then getting a good job. And so even though I had the education, when I came back, the passion still lied very much so working with youth and especially young girls. So when I went back to see what I could do, I was informed I had to go back to school to become a teacher if I wanted to go work in the schools. And for me, I was done school and I did not want to go be a teacher. However, I was trying to still think what I could do with all this. And while I was doing that, I ended up going and working in oil and gas because here in Calgary, Alberta, oil and gas the energy sector is huge here.
Mhm.
So once I went through, got the job at the oil company, was working through there, making very good money. I ended up kind of figuring, at that, and now this was 30 plus years ago. So women in the oil industry or energy sector, um, we couldn't get very high up. And so we were kind of stuck. And at the time when I looked around, I was always wondering, these men that were making, the $1 million, couldn't turn their computer on, didn't know how to photocopy, yes, or fax, because, we're going way back. And I wanted to go into something where men and women got paid the same to do the same job. And I'm not like this bra burning, rah rah woman of that, but I feel that men and women have so much to offer. Each of them have so much to offer. And I thought, why can't we go and offer the same and see what comes up? And when I started looking, it was frontline. And so law enforcement is what popped up. And for me, I enjoyed, I had taken some law classes, had taken some criminal justice classes, really enjoyed that, but I had never touched a gun. I had never been into a fight. I mean, I always had, my pink nails and makeup and hair done, and like that was me. So I'll never forget walking in my first day into recruit class, and I'm looking around, and people were looking at me, kind of going, I think, you got into the wrong room because uh, this just was not, I did not fit into this box. Um, and, I'll never forget that when I sit back and think it actually makes me laugh now looking back. It was very tough. And through that time, um, I never fit into the box as a cop. I was always, I was always different. I talked to people differently. I supposedly, the calls got done, but I was different in how I did the calls. I had empathy, I had compassion. Not saying that there's police out there that don't, but the people that I was around, for me, I was just different. But yet, when I went to calls and I spent time with those victims or survivors and people that, even if it was their house had gotten broken into, but they had never had to deal with the police. For me, I always wanted to make it an experience that they would remember and know that they had my attention the entire time, that I cared 100% for what was going on. And no matter what around me was happening, I was focused and fully with them because, for them, their home, their castle, their safe space was just invaded. And if nothing else had ever happened and this was the only thing, that's huge for
Oh, yeah.
somebody, right? So that was a big thing for me. So went through policing, loved it, absolutely loved my career. I was able to work in areas, domestic violence, sex crimes, child abuse, child at risk response team, behavioral science unit, school resource officer, spent 8.5 years there working in the high schools, um, diversity resource team, worked the street as well, because that's, when we come on working the street. And I look back and, I wouldn't have changed anything. And I I look back though and always wondered, would it have been better for me to move up the ranks? And I can honestly say for myself, no, I'm not a yes man. I stand up for what I believe. I have integrity. My core values are very important to me. And so for myself, I would rather have been out and been able to do a lot more than kind of working my way up the ranks. So and so I retired May of 2023, and I think I'm busier now than than when I was policing and had an actual schedule.
But you ended up in the schools, didn't you?
I did. Well, and that was 8.5 years of, I guess from what was it? My son is 6. So when he was born, 2000, so 2009 to 2017.
What was your experience like in the school?
It was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Uh, the first school that I went into, I walked in, and I'll never forget this. I walked in, and it's in a poor area of Calgary, but a very high immigrant area. So it was noticed as the UN school because there were so many different nationalities there and cultures and dialects. It was just amazing. However, when I walked in there, my first interaction was with a couple of Arabic young men. They came toe to toe, right in my face, and and I'm changing the language a bit, but it was kind of like, "How dare you come into our school, a female and a cop?" And that was kind of my first interaction that I had with these kids. And it kind of took me back to, realize, okay, I'm coming in to a school where there's so many different cultures. And in a lot of the cultures, women are not regarded as
Yeah.
equal, right? So really started to learn about a lot of these different cultures and what that looks like and how I could present myself and work with these kids and these families so that there was never a feeling of intimidation. There
Mhm.
was there was always a feeling of respect. However, the families also felt that they were seen, heard, and valued, and the kids felt that they were seen, heard, and valued because that was very, very important to me.
Mhm.
And I spent 3 years in that school. And when I left, I remember I had some of these boys and I had charged them with different crimes and this kind of stuff, but they left bouquets of flowers on my police car the day that I was leaving because when they came up after and were talking to me, they said, "You still treated us like a human being. The respect was there. And you know what? You were honest with us, but you gave us chances." And I thought, like I still get goosebumps when I talk about it because um, when you look at many of these kids and even adults, there's reasons why people do things,
Hmm.
right? And so when you look at even a kid stealing a sandwich from 7-Eleven, for instance, or Max or wherever from a convenience store, when that happens, yeah, okay, they sold something, that is a crime. But when you start actually digging down, the one time this did happen, um, I found out, this kid is living in a car with his dad. They have no food. His dad is, drops the kid off in the morning. They have no place to shower, no place, anything like that. His dad then drives to work, and he was a working father, but they did not have even enough to pay for rent. So this kid stole the sandwich. He said, I actually even read the date to know that it was going to expire in a couple days. So it wasn't even a fresh sandwich. And when I, took him back down to 7-Eleven to talk to the owner realized what was going on and with some of the kids in our school. And so then it became a kind of a project where he then started donating food that was going to go bad or be expired to the school for the kids that did not have food or, you know, maybe forgot lunch or did not have lunch, that kind of stuff. So all of a sudden, you start collaborating and start working with the community because everybody, again, has a story and there's a reason behind things.
Now, your book is a compilation of stories of some of the young people you ran into. Do you have a favorite out of those stories? By
You know,
favorite, I would say one that always sticks with you and moves you because they're all moving and they all really make you stop. And at least for me, it really took me back to how hard and how emotional and how lost you can be as a teenager.
mhm. Excuse me. Yeah, that is true. One that really continues to kind of, I guess, resonates not the right word, but I'll never forget it, is the first one, John's story. And just the fact of, a kid coming to school, just tries to fit in, um, not realizing what is actually going on at home and what he's actually going through day by day. Again, a kid who doesn't have food in his the cupboards or the pantry. Uh, Mom, we find out later, she's a stripper. Dad's in jail, brother's in jail. They're living in we call it Calgary housing, so government housing. And yet he comes to school every day. He goes to his classes. He tries to fit in the best that he can. Yet this kid, I remember walking down, and I think it's in the story, walking down the hall one day, and something just said to me, and I didn't really know him, but something said to me, you know what? Offer him a cafeteria card. So I did. I just said, you know what? Hey, here's a cafeteria card for whenever you need it. You can get your meals, your lunches, that kind of stuff. And he just said thank you. And later on, he actually asked why I did that. And I told him, I something inside me told me that I needed to do it. And for me, I know I'm a faith-based woman, and so for me, I knew what it was. But talking to him, he said, you know what? I hadn't eaten for 4 or 5 days. He said, I hadn't had food. So for you to give this to me, he said, I felt like you were an angel, my guardian angel coming in. And so again, it was just, going through with that. And then I ended up receiving a phone call at about 11:30 one night from him. And he asked if I remembered who he was. And I said I did. And he said he had doused himself in gasoline in the living room in gasoline. And he said he just couldn't live anymore. There was just no point, no purpose for him. And hearing in his voice the sadness, it's still to this day, I mean, it just pierces my heart because it was just so sad. Somebody 16 years old feeling that they had nothing left. Um, and so being able to talk him through, and we, I attended the residence with a few other police officers, and, fire was there and EMS or medical services. And um, once he came out, we were able to talk him out. And I went in to actually see what we were dealing with because he told me, he said, and in the story, he's sleeping on a mattress that the springs are literally coming out. He can feel all the springs. He has a couple pairs of jeans, a couple pairs of shirts and a hoodie. And there's holes in the shirts, but he would just zip up the hoodie and so it wouldn't matter. He could still wear them. And when I walked into the house, no food in the house. And when I walked in, the living room, there's the can of gasoline in the middle, everything, curtains, furniture, everything had been doused, ready to go. And went up to his room, exactly what he had said. That was what it was. And he said for him to even see sunlight, because their building, the window that he looked out, there was another concrete window or concrete building and parking lot. He never got sun. And he said, just to be able to have a sun on my face, and to have waffles made in the morning, he said he would think about that. And that was what would get him through. And then for him saying, how he lived, he would make sure he was awake each night for mom so he could hear the key turning, the key in the door handle with it turning. So he knew mom got home safely that night. Well, who knows what time that was? So he's not even really sleeping, right? And realizing that mom sometimes comes home and she's beaten up. As a 16-year-old, holy cow, that's a lot. So that's the first of the stories, as you know. And just for people to be able to realize that it doesn't matter who you are, we don't know the stories of these kids or even, of our fellow neighbors or people, our colleagues. We don't know what's actually happening at home. So to take that time to find out who they are, you know, what makes them drive, what their passions are, could actually change the whole trajectory of a life.
Oh, for sure. I think that if you knew somebody's story, you could not have anything but empathy for them.
Yeah,
But we
yeah.
don't take the time to know each other's stories. And we have all these, public personas that keep us safe, quote unquote, safe. But I'm not sure they really do keep us safe.
Well, and what does safe mean? Because when you look at it and we talk about safe spaces, each person's safe space is very different. So if we feel safe in one area, we might go someplace else and somebody says, well, this is a safe space, so we're all talking about it, but you feel that this is the furthest thing from a safe space for me. So it's very interesting with that. And I love the fact with your book, The Bump in the Road, because again, we never know what life is going to throw in our paths.
I
And
know.
sometimes that little bump that somebody might think it's a little bump, but for us, it is a mountain. It can change, our life. It can change who we are. It can change the way we look at things, our resilience, all of that kind of stuff. So I love how, with the bump in the road and with the podcasting, like it's true. It's we all have our bumps in the road.
We do. And your point that it really can change our outlook on things or how we see things is so real. And until we start stripping away these perspectives and beliefs that we have and really examining them, we're operating in as if we are tied up. We're tied up with the
Mhm.
past, with our perception of the past, with our emotions that may or may not be relevant because of our perceptions. I mean, it's really quite a mess.
It is, well, and even our assumptions,
Oh,
the
yeah,
amount of
our
times,
beliefs.
yeah, like the amount of times that, I would talk to kids and they would come into my office, and this is why I ended up writing the book. But they would come into my office in tears, and they were going through stuff, whether it was a breakup, right? Or depression, or they did not get into the university that they wanted to get in, whatever it was. And their assumption of how their parents would take this news, or if they went to go talk to them, they were afraid their parents would judge them, not listen, all the things that make connecting and engaging very difficult. And yet, when you brought the parents in, yes, there were some parents that, were very quick to make a judgment right away. But then, as they kind of started decompressing a bit, it was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to sit and listen to what you as my child has to say. But then there was other parents who, when they came in, arms wide open, cried and sitting down with their kids, on the floor. Um, and I think the kids were more flabbergasted at really, like, there's no judgment. It's okay. But we all make assumptions. And sometimes those assumptions can be detrimental to us connecting and engaging with each other.
We were talking earlier about how in this day and age we have more information on parenting online than we've ever had. But to what extent does it really permeate the society? To what extent are parents just kind of on autopilot or not as engaged as they could be? And I don't want to contrast this point in time to another point in time because I think that there have always, my theory is all families are dysfunctional in their own way. And you just choose your poison and figure it out as you go along. But I don't know that human nature changes that much over time. I don't know that parenting has changed that much over time.
I have to agree with you. I don't think it has. I think we've been given a lot more to look into and maybe different ways to try things. I call them tools, right? Tools in our toolbox. However, when we look at, you look back, no matter what, how we were raised is what we're going to bring into our parenting. And what we know with what we have is what we do. So, I was asked regarding the book, well, it's another self-help book. I said, this is not a self-help book because as parents, we don't need more self-help books.
No.
And why should I have the right to tell somebody, what, there's an issue with you, you need help. And so here is, because I have just as many things going on as the next person. Yet, if we look at it as tools and saying, you know what? I've tried all these different ways and I can't figure this out, or they're just not working. I'm going to try this, take this next tool because maybe with one of my kids it'll work, maybe the other one it didn't work. So I agree. Parenting has not changed a ton. However, how we've been parented over the years, I believe has changed. And then that's what we bring in. And then again, there's so many parenting courses and so many books and so many this and that. It's like, when you're a new mom, everybody has some kind of information to tell you whether you're feeding them wrong, you're holding them wrong, you should pick them up when they're crying, don't pick them up, let them, all this kind of stuff. And until you finally figure it out and get into kind of your groove, you're always going to have somebody telling you that you're doing it wrong. And that's the same with parenting. And I think we know our kids best. And yes, there are some toxic families and toxic situations that where, police and government agencies and stuff do need to get involved. And yes, I 100% with that. Yet when we look back, we need as parents to get involved with our kids, know who they're talking to, find out what their safe spaces are, find out even what their five love languages are. That might sound for some people, ugh, I don't want to take the time. There's a quiz online for teens. Go ahead and do it with your teen. And it is amazing because you might be giving the gifts all the time and you wonder why they're not thanking you and you think they're a spoiled brat. It has nothing to do with that. Their love language is you sitting down playing a game with them or you sitting down and just having a conversation. They don't care about gifts or the newest clothes or anything of that. And until you know what their love language is and what makes them tick, it's going to be a battle for you, and you're never going to connect and understand that with them.
That's a really interesting point. Because for anybody who doesn't know what the five love languages are, it's how any of us respond to attention. It's the type of attention we want. And I probably can't name the five off the top of my head, but like one of them is simply time, spending time. One is acts of service. I'm going to space out on the rest, but
Physical touch,
physical touch.
gifts, and then there was one other. Oh, and it's interesting because a lot of our kids have all of them, right? Yet there is one, usually one or two that just kind of pop up. And even some of the kids can tell you themselves if you ask them. And I mean, I knew this with my 16-year-old because he would be, well, let's just go and watch a movie together. okay, yeah, we're watching a movie. We're not really talking, but of course I'm like, oh, I can start going through emails. I can, do this. So I pull my phone out. And there'd be times I remember when he was younger and he'd stop the movie and he'd just stare at me. And he's like, Mom, I asked you to spend some time. I said, well, we're watching a movie. He's like, I know, but you don't need to be on your phone. So
Wow.
immediately I'm like, okay. So even if we're not really talking, for him, it was that time together,
Yeah,
just having me connecting with him, being there with him, fully engaged. So I actually had him take the test because I wanted to make sure. And yeah, it was like it's quality time is very, very important to him. He doesn't care about anything else. So going out for lunch, but just him and I.
that's interesting. You know, your book is, for me at least, reading it, I thought it was very emotional. Um, I can't imagine being a teenager in this day and age with all these electronics and AI and everything else. I was reading something the other day, I think it was on a Substack, and it pointed out that we have a new generation coming along that doesn't approach dating in terms of meeting people or chemistry or anything else. It's a swipe on a phone.
Mhm.
Communication is on the phone as opposed to face, where you get all the facial expressions and the nuance that goes along with being physically present with somebody. My gosh, what's that going to do to us?
I sit back and think about even when ATMs came in.
Yeah.
And I remember, and even to this day, my mom says, she says, I want to go and talk to a person. I
Mm.
don't want to talk to like or go to a machine and get that out. But I want to actually, when I go to the bank, I want to go and that's my outing. I go and talk to a person. And you watch when you walk into a bank now, there's a lot of seniors in there because for them, going to the bank is an outing for them. So they go and they have face to face with somebody there. Maybe they know them, maybe they don't, but that's their time and their outing to go. And so I look at it now and even dating, you used to go to the bars or at youth group or whatever, to interact and organically, whatever that means, to find somebody. And now, yes, I mean, you don't even know if that's a real person on the other side.
No, and there are lots of scams out there.
Oh, and even now I learned with like with FaceTime of all things, you can have somebody can steal a picture from wherever, put it up and show it on FaceTime. They can be behind their phone talking, so the lips are moving and they're talking, but through this face. So you actually think you're talking to whoever, whatever stock photo or whatever photo's been stolen, that person. And I thought, oh my goodness, like that is really scary. No wonder so many people are getting taken for hundreds of thousands of dollars because you don't even know anymore.
No, you don't. And yet that's where our communication is going.
Yes. Well, and what about connection? What about the engagement? And I think about even with coaches and when COVID was going on and you did your workouts or whatever over online, talking to the coaches after and even to the participants, the clients, they hated that because it was the fact of having that connection with their coach. Yeah, the coach can be like, go harder, but you're not standing beside me. You don't actually even know how hard I'm actually working. And, you can see me, but when you're actually next to that person or even meetings, the connection that happens within a board meeting or within a meeting within where people can actually connect and communicate and collaborate in person is huge. The eye contact, the body language, the feel that you get from that other person. There's just a difference.
It's really interesting. I moved last October and I'm in a suburban area and I I meet a lot of people, but I was meeting people that were more urban oriented. I live in the Treasure Valley. Boise is the local
Okay.
city, so I'm out in Eagle, and that's fine. It's great. I've been having a blast. I've been doing all sorts of fun things, but I'm not meeting anybody in my neighborhood. So I started a meetup just for the Eagle Star area here, and I think I have 70 some odd people signed up in about a week.
Wow.
And
See, they
the
need
point, the
it.
point of the meetup was to meet your neighbors.
Yes. But look at how many people are craving that.
Yeah.
And we still see in the neighborhoods how many times some of the newer neighborhoods you drive in. And I remember this when I was a community liaison officer, and we would go around, when neighbor disputes or whatever. And there were neighbors living 22, 23 years, barely knew who their neighbor was, but was ticked off because the neighbor was trimming a tree or a hedge that was over into the other yard, right? So, but people drive in their garage, close the garage
Yep.
door. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, so, and the neighborhood that I live in is an older neighborhood. And I love the fact that the neighbors love watching what's going on. And I've got a 16-year-old now, right, who, is driving. So it's like, oh, well, I saw him going down here or whatever, so they kind of keep you in line. And I mean, I've got a great kid. We have a great sense of communication and talking and stuff. But if he's speeding somewhere, he's not going to tell me he's speeding, but the neighbors will let me know. Or if somebody was on our property or something. But that is what community is all about. It's supporting each other.
You would think so, but I think we've really lost it. And I mean, just the response to this meetup alone, it really floored me. I didn't know if anybody would sign up, but I really believe that people are missing and seeking that one-on-one personal connection where they can make a friend, where they can create a social network. Nothing out there, nothing amazing, things that we used to innately have by virtue of the fact that we physically got together.
Hmm. Yeah. And that's pretty much it. Like even people going over to homes, or, I remember my parents grew up on the farm, and I remember when we go spend the summers there, people would just show up. So you just knew you'd have food ready, you'd have this, that. They would just come onto the property, ring the doorbell, and come in. That was it. And we don't even have that, to actually ask people to come over. Or I mean, you've got to book weeks in advance now. And I think too, people are so busy and they put so much on their schedules and their kids' schedules that you actually don't even physically have time to just stop and even grab a cup of coffee sometimes with somebody.
But what are they busy with?
Well, that's the thing. What are we really busy, or is it something that we're trying to just fill up time because we don't
I
want
think
to be by ourselves?
I think we're distracted, and I think we're purposely distracting ourselves so we don't have to be with ourselves.
Yeah? Because what will we find out? Who am I really?
Yeah. And who am I really might be rather different than your place in
It
society. That's terrifying for a lot of
is.
people. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been through that actually at least twice in my life, that major identity upheaval, and it's very terrifying. I mean, but on the other side of it is such wonderful comfort and clarity
Hmm.
that I would tell anybody if you're facing that situation where your life seems not true to yourself, it's not connecting. Take a hard look at it. And it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight, but the journey is so worthwhile. And I've been saying this a lot lately, but I have a new theory, and that is our lives are very linear. You go to school, go to the right school, get the right job, da 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 da. And I think that if we lived lives that were truer to ourselves and we
Mm.
moved more by emotion and intuition, what an interesting ride we would have,
Oh, it would be pretty cool
wouldn't
because
it?
we would allow ourselves, to just kind of put ourselves out there.
Yeah,
And yeah, and I think, going back to what you were talking about, even when you're changing jobs or you retire, or all of a sudden, that's what I went through is my identity is who am I without this blue uniform?
yeah,
But, I remember telling the kids in the school, because many of them, especially coming from some of the cultures they did, police were corrupt in where they came from, very negative. Police were just bad. So trying to work with them to show, who we actually are, what we do, that kind of thing. And I always would say, this is just a uniform. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm this, I'm that. I still go to the grocery store. Yet when I retired, I actually had to sit with myself for a little while and actually figure out, who am I without this uniform? And, I'm looking now with just some rebranding and, finding what are my whys? What what are my passions? What are things that if I could do anything, what would that look like for me? And I believe even I'll be 50 this year and I'm going, at 50, I'm still learning this about myself.
Oh, and you will be forever because you're forever evolving.
Yeah.
And if you're one of those people who's curious, you're going to be peeling back those layers of what society, how society wants to, perceive you. You'll be
Yep.
peeling those back forever. One of the things I look for, this is a little out there perhaps, but when I ask somebody who they are, I usually get the job, I live here, mother or father. What I listen for, and it's very rare, is for somebody to describe themselves as I'm honest, I'm loyal, I like
Mhm.
adventure. Those
Yep.
qualitative things that say who you are, regardless of those labels. And
Yep.
very rarely does anyone present themselves that way.
Very interesting with that. Well, and even the fact I think too is, who you are of, I want to have an impact. I want to be able when everything is even when you look in the mirror, who do you see and what can this impact have that you can leave even as a legacy? And I think that that stuff is so important as well because the here and now, sure, is great. But, yeah, you make all your money, you do all this, but as you start going down the road, what is that leaving? And what when you are, I don't want to say on your deathbed, but when you're sitting one day in the old folks' home and you're talking with them there, you can and you look back, yeah, who were you, who are you with everything that has gone on and where you are now? Has that really changed? No, because you still have integrity, courage, all of
Mhm.
that. That doesn't change because that is your core belief. That's your core values.
It's who you are, and it
Yeah,
evolves, and you may discover you have courage that you didn't know you had.
exactly. Yep.
No, it's I think that people need to plan more for those latter years because people are coming off the society's structure where it's all about making money. It's all about having
Mhm.
stuff, the right address, the expensive car, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't think that they're prepared for anything else. And they can continue that structure if they want through retirement. But I think the people who make the jump into retirement well are the people who go within and start asking exactly some of the questions you're asking. And that is, what is my legacy? Who am I? What are my skills? What can I leave behind? And they look for places to apply that.
hmm And that's huge. And, more and more now as with, I mean, all of our countries, um, I mean, the homelessness, the poverty that's, continuing to go, people not even, two working parents, not even being able to afford to put food on the table, having to go to the food bank. That's a reality now.
Yes.
And so when you look at some of these people that have that extra income from later and want to leave some kind of legacy, it's been wonderful to watch how these philanthropists have come out and have, been saying, I've always wanted to, you know, start a breakfast program for kids. This is what I'm going to do. I've always wanted to, yada, yada, whatever somebody has. And I think that that is something that is so important. And I love that you said that is to start looking at what can I do? What can I do to make this world a better place, for when I'm kind of getting older and even when I go and for my kids and my grandkids.
And how can you foster a young person? Because I think young people have always been lost, but I think today it's even harder. I really
Mhm.
think it's incredibly difficult with social media that never quits 24/7, and nobody has an easy set of teenage years. Almost nobody. I mean, they're not the best part of your life. If any kids are listening to this, life gets a lot better after that.
Yep. Yep. That's
But
funny.
what I mean, I think we've got to break this digital addiction. I think we have to start introducing more human to human, real world experiences because it's all
Mhm.
experiential. And when you see the experiential aspect of human interaction versus the screen interaction, they're so different. What conclusions will you take away from that?
Is true. Well, and even looking how our kids, the fantasy versus reality. And, usually from 0 to 5, you start realizing, that, fantasy and reality. Um, but now with the games and how real they look and what
Oh,
goes on with them, now you have 25, 30-year-olds who are having a very hard time deciphering and leaving that fantasy world back to the real world. And so I think that when we look at especially our youth, it comes down to number one, as parents, we need to really know who our youth are. What are their true, honest, real needs? Um, Come in there and like the last chapter in my book, talking about the different tools, be not judgmental, have active listening, like actually listen to what the kids are talking about and saying to you, and um giving giving them safe spaces. And again, you and I had talked earlier, every kid has a different safe space, and what that looks like is very different. For somebody, it could be going down and actually gaming with your kid because you can't connect with them at all. However, that they're gaming, that is their safe space for them. So what does that look like? That might mean you going down as a parent and saying, you know what? I want to connect with you. Teach me how to game for the next 15 minutes. And I had a mom actually call me regarding that. Her 15-year-old son gamed all the time. She had not connected with him, could not. They tried taking stuff away. They tried doing everything and they were at their wits' end. So I said to her, you know what? Why not just go down, sit down and ask him to show you?
can't
And
beat
she
them,
rolled
join
her,
them.
well, yeah, she rolled her eyes and she's like, oh, I hate it. I know you hate it, but you know what? You want to connect with your kid and you don't want to lose your kid. Because right now at 15, this is prime time. So she went down, sat down on the couch with him, and he kind of stared at her and he's like, what do you want? She says, I want you to teach me the game. And he's like, Mom, you hate gaming. I know, but this is the only way I can connect. He taught her. They didn't talk at all. But of course, she died within like 10 minutes, but she did it. She came up and I got a phone call, not even an email from her, a phone call from her 2 weeks later saying, Carla May, I had to hold on to my counter because I didn't want to fall over because my son came up today, looked around the kitchen to make sure nobody was there, and said, Mom, can we talk? She said he has never done that. And she said, funny, it took a couple weeks, but he started telling me what was going on at school, what was happening with his friends, and how gaming for him was his safe space. He went down there and he felt it was self-soothing for him. He didn't have to deal with anything else going on. So she said, I really learned. So now they make it every 2 weeks. He got some fun games at, Donkey Kong and those kind of things, Mario Kart. They go down and for half an hour they game together. They laugh. They may talk, they may not. But that going into his safe space, and he told her, he said, Mom, I felt valued. I felt that you saw me. For a kid to say that to a mom, ugh, like it just brings tears to your eyes because that is all we want. So the safe space is huge and non-judgment. Oh my goodness. As parents, we believe that we know everything and we know our kids telling us something. Oh, I've been through that. So you honestly shut down listening to them because you already know what you want to say to them. Yet if you ask them, do you want me to give you advice or do you want me just to listen? You know how many want to say, just listen right now? You listen, and then at the very end, they're like, you know what, Mom, what would you do?
Yeah.
They do want advice, but they want it on their terms. So listen to what they have to say. Don't all automatically tell them what they're doing wrong, that, well, they should be doing this or whatever. That's not what they need. That just shuts them down more. And again, as parents, when it comes to phones, majority of the time you are all paying for them. They're all registered under your name. So technically and legally, you own them. As a parent, you need to remember that. And you will still get in contact with your kid at school if they don't have a phone. Because as we know, we went to school, didn't have phones, and there were landlines, and there still is landlines in the schools. And if not, each teacher has a cell phone as well. So um, your kid needs you to be a parent. And if it means taking away their cell phone, whatever that looks like, then that may be what you have to do. But we're losing we're losing our parenting over the last number of years. Parents are not being parents. They're wanting to be friends. That's not what we are. our kids need boundaries, they need guidelines, they need to be guided on what to do and where to go. That is our job as parents.
What about the role of community? Where does that come in?
Community is huge, especially when it comes to parents, to I call, grandparents, anybody who's an advocate for youth, because all of us are having our own issues. We all have our things that we're going through. We've all had our own traumas. And, I look at it when the newcomers and immigrants come into our city. Many of them realize when they come here, it's not like back home. The village helped raise the kids, right? That's how it was. When you come here, you now have to find your own village. You have to find your own people. And if that means going out or starting a Facebook group or something of saying, you know what, even as a parent, I've got a 15-year-old that I cannot connect with. I don't know what to do. Are there other people out there like that? Can we, start talking or even go for a walk and let's chat? But community is so huge in just even allowing us as parents to feel seen, heard, and valued, because all of a sudden you're not alone. And that's one of the reasons, too, I wrote the book, for not only youth to realize you're not alone with the stories, but for parents to realize you're not alone and that there's other people out there going through the exact same things that you are going through. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask other people if they're going through stuff and maybe what they did. Or if you're, talk to your pastor, talk to community leaders, talk to different people, because that is a lot of times what is going to get you through, even within the school. There's other parents in the school that are suffering. Find out who they are and start building that collaboration with them, because they might have an idea that you might not have, that, their idea is pretty good. And you are like, I'm going to try that. And you would have never thought of it before. So I think that's really important.